What has been the most helpful organizational tool for all of Bugsy's gear and supplies? That would be a tie between a large plastic bin that we just throw it all in when we're not using it, and my mom, who kind of takes care of everything. Any tips for those with invisible disabilities? It's a bit vague, but yeah, I guess I have a few tips. My disability isn't invisible currently, but it did used to be, so I understand what people go through. My best tip would be do your best to educate people whenever you have the opportunity, because even though not everyone takes invisible illnesses seriously, it's gonna make it better for you and everyone else in the long run. If everyone with invisible illnesses really explains to people and helps them understand that they're the same as visible disabilities. I mean, I know it's not easy. It's definitely really hard. You know, people don't take you seriously. People can be quite nasty about it, but definitely just try your hardest to advocate and raise awareness as much as you can. And I think over time, people will start taking it more seriously. I think people are starting to take invisible illnesses more seriously, but it's just going to take time. So keep doing your best to do that, and hopefully you have a thick skin, because that will make it much easier. What is your favorite task that Bugsy performs for you? My favorite in terms of like the most important and crucial task would definitely be the alerts, because of the fact that they're crucial. You know, without them, I would be in really, really bad shape. I'd say, I guess, in terms of which one I just like best, my favorite task would be when he goes and retrieves my medication and then goes and gets me a Gatorade from the refrigerator. Partly because it's cute, but I think I'm also a little biased because it was really the first task we ever successfully, fully, completely trained. Where did you get Bugsy? I actually ended up getting Bugsy from a woman who lived just down the road from us, who breeds Aussie Shepherds. Tried to go through some ServiceDog programs, and over time I gave up because my medical condition was declining more rapidly than I could wait, and also just because it was so difficult, it was just discouraging, and I did give up. So we ended up looking through shelters and rescues, and we just couldn't find a dog that was right for the job, that had the capabilities and the skills that I needed him to do, and was also, you know, a suitable age to begin training. The day that I just completely gave up, my mom found him in an ad in Uncle Henry's, which is like the main version of Craigslist. Kind of a sketchy place to get a dog, but it worked out really well. I've seen that you have a TBI. How did that happen? Long story short, sports. Just a crap load of concussions over the years, and for a while I was just classified as post-concussive syndrome, and then over time it just built up more and more and more to the level of TBI, and that was, you know, where I lost the ability to read and write, and that was where the wheelchair came in, and all of that good stuff. How long have a service dog? How long have you had a service dog? Like, meaning me? I guess it's been a little over a year now. That's the only thing that would make sense. How long have you had a... What is it with people forgetting their pronouns? Sheesh. What do you say to those who feel uncomfortable going places with you because of all of the staring and attention that you get? I'd say just sort of kindly talk to them and say, look, I'm not exactly comfortable with this either, but, you know, I have to live with it to be able to get the help that I need, that my dog is able to provide for me. And just, you know, make it clear to them that it's not exactly like you're thrilled about it either, but it would mean a lot to them if you would be willing to look past that, because, you know, if they're really your friends or family, they're going to be able to get over that. It may not be easy, but if they want to hang out with you or go places with you, they're going to have to be okay with it. Possibly give some suggestions like the one that I suggested about listening to music, because that not only blocks out some of the nasty comments, but it also is a good distraction when people are staring at you. You know, it's nice to be able to just get lost in music and not have to deal with all of that. How do you go about training your dog to be a service dog? That is a really vague question, so I'm just going to post some helpful links and resources down below in the description here to help answer that question a little bit more. How do you train deep pressure therapy? Also known as DPT for short. This really depends on your dog. Bugsy just happens to be a huge jerk who never wants to cuddle. He's affectionate, but he's not snuggly and cuddly. So getting him to be laying on me and staying there was really difficult. I just trained him, you know, I used the down command, started having him down, and then gradually would move it further and further so that he was, you know, moving across my body. And over time, time he'd be laying completely across my thighs or something. And then once he got the point, we started training different positions and commands for different pain and symptoms. What tips do you have for new service dog handlers? If you don't have a thick skin, I suggest you get one. It's not easy. I don't have thick skin at all. I'm a huge baby about mean people and like rude comments and stuff like that. They still get to me. I've learned how to not react to them, but they still bother me. Don't let the stuff get to you. And I know that's way easier said than done. That's definitely the number one tip, is just know that it's not going to be easy and you are going to be hurt and offended and insulted and just stuff like that. Do not underestimate what your dog is capable of. When I first got Bugsy, I had no intention of him being able to alert to my seizures or passing out. And that just happened to be a big bonus on top of the other things I was training him to do. So when it first happened, I sort of like knew what he was doing, but I hadn't really admitted it to myself. Like I hadn't accepted it. And I ignored his alerts the first 5 or 6 times. And that was so stupid of me. It ended badly. Even if you have the slightest bit of doubt, no, you can't be alerting now. The odds are you're probably wrong. Really trust your dog. How old does your dog have to be a service dog? Most people don't start training their dogs until they're old enough to reliably start learning commands. Usually, from what I've seen, 4 or 5 months is a pretty average starting point. You can start with an older dog too. There's no set age for your dog has to be this old to be a service dog. It just has to be capable of public access and properly trained to do at least 1 or more tasks that mitigate your disability. When does a service dog in training become a service dog, a fully trained service dog? Again, there's no specific timeline. An estimate would be 2.5 years. And that's assuming, starting from scratch, from getting the dog and just starting absolutely from scratch in terms of training. Where can I find a copy of the ADA laws and the state laws for service dogs? I guess short answer here would be the internet. I'd be happy to post a link to the ADA laws and some other resources that could be helpful to you down below. How did you get Bugsy used to wearing his harness and or other gear? I did not have to train for that at all. He was totally fine with the harness within 30 seconds of putting it on. So if your dog is struggling with that, my best suggestion would just be to ease him into it very slowly. Don't force them. Use lots of high praise and treats and stuff. And if that doesn't work, seek help from a professional or a local trainer, because thankfully I never really had to go through getting Bugsy acclimated to all of this different gear, because he was just fine with it all from day one, including the wheelchair. I also never had to train him to walk next to that. He was just chill with it. Yeah, sorry, it's probably not a very helpful answer, but I really just got lucky. When can you bring your service dog to school with you? When your fully trained service dog or service dog in training is capable of not only behaving appropriately when it comes to public access, but is also trained to complete 1 or more tasks that mitigate your particular disability. As for service dogs in training, that all really just depends on where you are, because service dogs in training are not covered by the federal laws, so that is all going to depend on your particular state's laws. How can you fly with your service dog without having to go through any access issues? The first thing I want to say here is there are things you can do to prevent them, but there is no 100% sure way to avoid an access issue. However, I do have 4 little tips for that. First one is absolutely prepare. If you come prepared, the odds of you having an access issue are slim to none, and if you do, it's probably nothing you could have possibly avoided. When you purchase your tickets, notify both the airline and the airport, because they are separate. And not that they need to know ahead of time, but I guarantee you more than anything, it is going to reduce the chances of you having a problem. Pick an airline that you trust. Some airlines are more notorious for being problematic when it comes to service dog teams, while some are quite well known for treating them very, very well. I personally have flown on both JetBlue and United with Bugsy. I highly suggest those if you intend to be flying anytime soon with your service dog. And get there early. You know how they tell everyone to get there early for security? Get there earlier than the normal early, because although you may not need to do this, if you leave extra early on top of the early, then you have an access issue and then it gets resolved, you're still probably going to make your flight. And the last little tip I have about flying without an access issue, just have a folder or some place where you can have all of like vaccine records and stuff. And while I have never actually had to use mine, I have Bugsy's magical folder that just literally has like every document we have on him, from proof of purchase to vaccinations to neutering, everything. Just, it doesn't hurt to have all of that stuff just in case you do run into a problem. Do you get used to the staring? I mean, you get used to it in the sense that you learn to bite your tongue and not call people out for being rude. You learn how to hold it back, like when people say really nasty things and just stare at you like you're not even human. You learn how to hold it in and just wait until you get home to be annoyed, or until you get in your car. For the most part, it's still very annoying and bothersome, but you do adjust. You don't become okay with it, but you adjust because there's really no way to stop it. What counts as a service dog task? Anything that the dog is trained to do to mitigate your disability, which often means it's something that you are unable to do yourself or struggle to do yourself with great difficulty, either because of pain or it triggers other medical problems, things like that. Anything can be a service dog task. There isn't like a set list of these are tasks and these are like the only service dog tasks the dog can do. This is going to be a really bad example and completely not realistic, but I'm just trying to see if I can get my point across. Say you had a disease that made you poop rainbows that destroy the universe or something, and your dog was able to be trained to stop you from pooping those rainbows that destroy the universe, which I guess could be considered disabling, then that could count as a task. A task can be considered a task even if you may not think it's a task, because it mitigates a problem that severely disables you in some way or another. Okay, one thing I need to make very, very clear. He makes me feel better does not count as a task. The dog has to actively be doing something that will mitigate the disability. So say you have a panic attack or something, and the dog is able to respond to that by something such as deep pressure therapy or alert to it ahead of time. That counts as a task. But just the presence of the dog being there and like letting you pet him and be all cute, that is not a task. That is often confused by a lot of people. Dogs that make me feel better are ESAs, and they can be very helpful to their owners, but they do not have public access rights. An ESA and a service dog are two very different things. An ESA is an emotional support animal.